Before we get started, I gotta say, this is one of the most important song stories I'll ever cover. Coming up, the story of a song that epitomizes the powerful effect of music on the human soul. It wasn't composed to be a hit. It wasn't even a conscious thought. It just fell out of this singer-songwriter. The song was bold. It was real. It was deeply vulnerable. So much so that this artist had no intention of releasing it. Certainly not as a single. Unlike most rock stars who rebel against their parents, this artist wrote a heartfelt tribute to his father. One day he actually showed it to his dad, and his dad broke down. Later, he decided to put the song out there when his dad became very sick. It became his most important work, and his father, he got to witness it march up the charts just before he passed. The story of the song that opened up a dialogue between fathers and sons the world over. Great stories coming up next on Professor of Rock. Hey, music junkies, Professor of Rock, always here to celebrate the greatest artists and the greatest songs of all time. You know, if you were raised on radio, on records, 8-tracks, or cassettes, CDs, you're going to dig this channel of musical nostalgia. Make sure that you subscribe below right now. Click the red button. I know you'll dig this channel. Click the little button there in the box so that you know when our new interviews and our new videos are coming out. Also, check us out on Patreon for even more content. And Patreon really helps us keep this a daily channel to curate the best of music. So it's time for another edition of one of my favorite shows we do on here, Number One in Our Hearts. Show that honors songs that were so unbelievably great, they should have been number one on the Billboard Hot 100 chart, but for whatever reason, be it lack of marketing, radio play, label support, or just sheer stupidity, the song came up short. Previous episodes, we covered Steppin' Out by Joe Jackson, Rosanna by Toto, and I Can Dream About You by Dan Hartman. Today, we're going back to the early 80s to a man who I feel had one of the purest voices in rock and pop history. His legacy still lives on. I'm talking about one of my favorite artists ever, the one and only Dan Fogelberg. Dan Fogelberg is definitely the maestro of soft rock. He practically invented the genre with 9 consecutive hit singles at top 40 and adult contemporary between 1979 and 1984. The music of Dan Fogelberg, it's magnetic, it's genuine and resonant. So over 16 studio albums full of masterful, heartfelt treasures. What song did Dan Fogelberg find his most gratifying? I mean, the man had so many beautiful, heartfelt hits. There was the all-time wedding song that has been played at too many to mention, Longer. Longer than there've been fishes in the ocean. The song that Dan said took him to the elevators. There's also the nostalgic holiday classic where Dan met his old lover in a grocery store and they shared a 6-pack and laughed until they cried, and the heart-wrenching hit, Same Old Lang Syne. We've covered that one in the past. There's also the only big hit that I can think of off the top of my head about the Kentucky Derby, Run for the Roses. Or there's also my favorite Fogelberg song, the well-worn, heart on his sleeve, divorce waiting to happen, heartbreaker, Lonely in Love. Now I'm lonely in love. But none of those hits were Dan's number one. When asked the fateful question, what song was his personal favorite ever? With a tear in his eye and a lump in his throat, Dan answered unequivocally, without thought, if in my life I were only allowed to write one song, it would be Leader of the Band. The leader of the band is tired. Dan wrote Leader of the Band as a tribute to his father, Lawrence Fogelberg, the man that gave him a gift he felt that he could never repay. Of course, the gift of music. The gift I know I never can repay. Lawrence Fogelberg, he was born the son of a cabinet maker. Like many young men of his generation, he thought he was going to be a soldier, perhaps fighting the Axis powers in World War II. But he discovered that his true calling was to become a musician.
Once, but his music wouldn't wait.
In addition to his natural prowess with music, Lawrence was a world-class swimmer in his youth. Actually, at the age of 17, he finished second to Johnny Weissmuller in the 1928 Olympics. Lawrence joked to his friends that if I had bested Johnny Weissmuller in that race, I might have been Tarzan in the movies. Lawrence actually was in the Army. He was stationed in Detroit when he got a phone call about an opening in the music department at Woodruff High School in Peoria. Even though Lawrence was very interested in the job, he couldn't just up and quit the Army. It took some time, but he managed to travel from Detroit to Peoria to vie for the position. After nailing the interview and accepting the job as a band leader, he met a talented young Scottish singer and classically trained pianist named Margaret Irving, who was also a leader in music. She was the director of her sorority chorus. So it didn't take long for Lawrence and Margaret to become a couple. They became so in 1946, and they raised 3 sons together. The first 2 boys, Mark and Peter, they went down different paths from the musical background of their parents. His siblings were not interested in a musical career. They had different callings, as Dan wrote in the 3rd verse, the leader of the band. My brothers' lives were different, for they heard another call. One went to Chicago and the other to St. Paul.
Chicago and the other to St. Paul.
The youngest offspring of the Fogelbergs was, of course, Daniel Fogelberg. Born in 1951, unlike his older siblings, Dan felt a burning desire to follow his father's footsteps at an very early age, actually. Lawrence Fogelberg was affectionately called the man with the thundering velvet hand, for his forceful yet mesmerizing conducting style that his son greatly admired.
Discipline, a thundering velvet hand.
During his career, Lawrence also directed the Bradley University Band for performances at football and basketball games. That happened from 1951 to 1959. So one of the earliest memories that Dan Fogelberg had about his childhood was a foreshadowing moment when he was only 4 years old. During one of the sporting events at Bradley University, Lawrence gave his youngest son a baton, and he let him conduct the band. Dan stood in front of his father, mimicking his dynamic motion with the baton while his father performed his duties behind him. Such a cool story.
Took me years to understand.
Even though he was only 4 years old, the impact of that experience, it never left Dan. He shared that it was an amazing feeling. He elaborated that it felt both very magical and powerful. I was fearless, Dan recounted. It was Dan's destiny to become a musician, and he loved music from an early age. But he hated taking piano lessons when he was a kid. He actually did whatever he could to avoid them. Dan blamed this on a short attention span, I guess what people would diagnose later as ADD. When Dan turned 11, though, he got his first guitar. It was an old Hawaiian slide guitar that was a difficult instrument to learn on. But Dan, he was a natural. He was so gifted as a guitarist that he could play by ear. Throughout high school in Peoria, Dan dazzled his schoolmates with his ability to play a variety of instruments. There was the guitar, there was the saxophone, and eventually the instrument that he avoided like math homework, the piano. As the expression goes, like father, like son, Dan dropped out of the University of Illinois in Champaign, and he drove an old pickup truck to LA to pursue a career in music.
This life I've chose and come to know so well.
Just as the senior Fogelberg left his military post in Detroit to pursue his musical career aspirations back in Illinois before. In the 4th verse, the leader of the band, this is where Dan praised his father for supporting his decision to leave college, in the middle of a semester, no less, to chase his dream. Something that very few parents would really understand or condone, for that matter.
All the music and your stories of the road.
Thank you for the music and your stories of the road. Thank you for the freedom when it came my time to go.
Thank you for the freedom when it came my time to go.
By 1979, Dan Fogelberg was a star. He'd more than paid his dues to hit the big time. performing as a studio musician, session musician, and he toured on the road for many years. So as we get into the lead up for this hit, I want to thank our sponsor, Zenni Eyewear, the glasses that I always wear. If you're in the market for a new pair of frames, Zenni is by far the best deal that you can do. You can design your own pair, choose the style, the color, the shape, all kinds of things. Make sure that you click up here on the info button to get up to 80% off regular retail prices. It's our special deal for you.
I thank you for the kindness and the times when you go.
So Dan would say that there was this one day where he was feeling terrific when he spontaneously wrote Leader of the Band to honor his father, his mentor. It wasn't planned for any length of time. The song, it just happened. Dan called Leader of the Band a one-day marvel because of how earnestly it came to him in such a quick jolt of inspiration. As Dan recalled, he just sat down with his guitar and bam, that thing was done. Dan knew, he just knew that he'd written something really important, but he had no intention of the song ever being anything than, a deeply personal song that he wanted to share with his dad.
Music denied a simpler fate.
He felt that it was too obscure and really non-commercial. He certainly never regarded the song as a potential single. Even his father stated that he was really surprised when it was released as a single, given how intimate the song was. Leader of the Band was originally supposed to be a cut on the Phoenix LP, but then Dan decided against it. He felt that it was too sentimental for the record. He had a change of heart, though, when it came time to program his follow-up opus, The Innocent Age, in 1981. Dan came home from Colorado to spend time with his parents in 1981, and he played a tape of Leader of the Band for his mother, Margaret. His father wasn't even supposed to hear it on that occasion, but when Lawrence listened to the song, he started to cry, and he admitted that he broke up every time that he heard the song thereafter. Lawrence was really touched by how lovingly and honestly the song was written by his youngest son. The first verse telling the origin story of Lawrence Fogelberg, how he was an only child, alone and wild.
Child alone and wild, a cabinet maker's son.
And how he left his home and went his lone and solitary way. Just beautiful poetry.
Went his lone and solitary way.
And Lawrence undoubtedly wept uncontrollably when his son expressed to the world that his father gave him a gift he could never repay. And then there was the heartfelt line when Dan Fogelberg expressed that he didn't think he told his papa that he loved him enough. Again, a very vulnerable song. It takes a very special voice to pull that off.
I don't think I said, I love you near enough.
Now, 6 years before the release of The Innocent Age, Lawrence Fogelberg retired from being the leader of the band. His last stint was the conductor of the Pekin Municipal Band in Pekin, Illinois. After his retirement, Lawrence transitioned into his twilight years with a quieter existence. He actually taught private music lessons. As his son narrated in his tribute, the leader of the band, he was tired and his eyes were growing old. Actually, Lawrence was terminally ill. His special time of the earth was nearing an end.
The band is tired and his eyes are growing old.
Leader of the Band was actually released as the third single from The Innocent Age, following the tearful nostalgic classic Same Old Lang Syne and the hit Hard to Say, both top 10 hits on the Billboard Hot 100, also the adult contemporary chart in 80 and 81.
To reach beyond the emptiness, but neither one hear the rocks.
Seems that Dan's initial instinct about Leader of the Band, it really underestimated the one-day marvel's commercial appeal. The touching tribute to his father would prove to be a powerfully moving, magnetic track, resonating with millions of people that wish that they had the foresight that Dan had to express their love and gratitude for their own father. Leader of the Band, that actually became the third consecutive top 10 smash from The Innocent Age, rising to number 9 on the Billboard Hot 100, and topping the adult contemporary chart as the second number 1 single at that format for Dan Fogelberg. The Innocent Age had 3 top 10 hits. That was pretty big for that time.
The band is tired and his eyes are growing old.
So 5 months after the single peaked on the charts, in March of 1982, the leader of the band, Lawrence Fogelberg, passed away. It was incredibly gratifying for Dan Fogelberg, though, that his father was alive when he wrote the song, and even more so that he was alive to relish in the heartwarming homage that his son so beautifully expressed to him. Dan was great about engaging with his public, and there were many occasions when one of the fans specifically mentioned how important Leader of the Band was in their life and how indebted that they were to him for creating such a poignant song for them to celebrate and to enrich their lives in their relationship with their own fathers. And when his father died, Dan kept his pledge to be a living legacy to the beloved leader of the band. He further honored his father's legacy by using his glorious instruments, his guitar and his voice, to put inspired songs into all of our souls. On the album, a tribute to Dan Fogelberg that was released in 2017, Zach Brown recorded a great rendition of Leader of the Band.
The band is tired and his eyes are growing old.
There's also Andy Gibb, dedicated Leader of the Band to his own father, Hugh Gibb.
And his song is in my soul.
And Lucy Arnaz Jr. performed a version of the song as a tribute to her famous father, the late Desi Arnaz. In her interpretation, Lucy changed the line "a cabinet maker's son" to "a mayor's son," since Desi's father, her grandfather, was the mayor of Santiago de Cuba from 1928 to 1932.
And wild, he was a mayor's son.
Leader of the Band is an enduring classic. It seems to get better and more significant as we grow in age. I know it does for me, especially since I lost my own father. I don't know how it's even possible for a song that is already so deeply meaningful to become even more poignant and cathartic, but it has somehow. Now, my dad wasn't a musician. He never taught me how to play a musical instrument. He shared his music with me. I've told so many stories, so many times, in many different ways, but my dad communicated with me through songs. The songs that had an impact on his own life. He shared them with me and the stories behind them, but not just the actual stories of the artist and what inspired them, but his own personal stories that were connected to these songs. It really helped me understand who my dad truly was. And in turn, it helped me understand myself and who I am today.
Legacy to the leader of the band.
I now pass that on to my own boys. And I got to tell you, the music of Dan Fogelberg was such a beautiful connection between me and my father. It's like Dan's music brought out a special vulnerability in my dad. My dad came from a really tough background. His father was an abusive alcoholic. You know, my dad had to figure out a lot of things on his own. He had a stiff upper lip a lot of times. But certain songs, certain artists could break that mold, and I would see my dad as he truly was. Well, Dan Fogelberg was one of those artists that brought that out in my dad.
Music and your stories of the road.
This song actually inspired me to go to my dad a couple of months before he passed and tell him how I truly felt about him. It was a moment I'll always cherish. You know, we all face so many challenges, and we hope that what we've done in our lives will translate into some kind of meaning that can help our family, our children, or friends in their own lives. Dan Fogelberg captured that in this song and in turn touched so many lives and allowed people to open up a conversation, a dialogue. I have to say that I truly miss Dan Fogelberg. His music connects with me like few others have.
Legacy to the leader of the band.
Even though it's been nearly 16 years since he passed, it's still hard to believe he's gone. He was so young when he lost his battle with cancer. Well, I tell you, we are honoring Dan today by giving him the #1 hit that he deserved back in 1981. Now, the week Leader of the Band peaked at number 9 on the Hot 100. The top 5 songs in the United States were the following. That Girl by Stevie Wonder at number 5.
That girl thinks that she's so bad.
Shake It Up by the Cars at number 4.
Shake it up.
I Love Rock and Roll by Joan Jett and the Blackhearts at number 3. There's Open Arms by Journey at number 2. And Centerfold by the J. Giles Band was at number 1. So I'm going to ask the J. Giles Band, who were at number 1 for a while with this song, to vacate the spot for just 1 week for this perfect song by the great Dan Fogelberg. So in closing, the tribute by Dan Fogelberg to his father Lawrence Fogelberg, the leader of the band. It ends with one of the most perfect conclusions of a song in popular music, I'm telling you. The track's climactic finish. It's the most memorable segment of the UCLA band performing the John Philip Sousa March, Washington Post. Arranged by the leader of the band himself, Lawrence Fogelberg. Like father, like son. Dan and Lawrence, thank you for the music, and thank you for opening up a dialogue between fathers and sons.
Legacy to the leader of the band.
Thanks so much for watching. Leave us a comment about Dan Fogelberg and his heartfelt tribute to his father, Lawrence Fogelberg, the leader of the band. What are your memories of the song? What are your thoughts and your feelings about the relationship of music between fathers and sons? Share some of your memories. Let's have a great discussion below and a great tribute to the great Dan Fogelberg and his father. Until next time, 3 chords and the truth, my friends.